Holy crap! And I mean that with as much emphasis as I can muster without peaking my microphone too bad. Holy crap! I've been sleeping on the Guardian Legend for years, and wow! I am glad I finally decided to tackle it. What a ride! So maybe I should start at the beginning. About 30 years ago, and Jesus, I'm really starting to show my age by doing these videos. About 30 years ago, a neighbor kid had told me that he was really hyped about this game, and of course he didn't use hyped because that wasn't a word we used back then, but this really cool game that he was really excited about playing. And so I went over, and he described it as a hybrid between The Legend of Zelda and Gradius. And I did not know what Gradius was at the time, so I was a little confused. So he showed me this game where you started in a shooting area and then later on went to like a top-down view. And I didn't care, because this kid had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, and I didn't, and that's what I wanted to play. You know, now I didn't really think of Guardian Legend until years later. Played it a couple times on emulation, and I didn't really think about it that much until the YouTube days when everybody was talking about it as a hidden gem. It's a hidden gem on the NES because everyone says it is. I had tried it a few times over the years, like I said, on emulation, and it seemed okay. Then I grabbed it when I first started collecting, since I knew it was one of those games that any NES collector is supposed to have in their collection. I played a few hours of it back then, thinking I'd really get into it, and it didn't really grab me because I think I was overwhelmed by my preconceived notion that this would be a really cryptic game, something hard to get into. The passwords were atrocious, and I was afraid it was just going to get too hard. I think I died at a boss a couple times, and I was just like, no, I can't do this right now, and then I just kept putting it off. This was probably back in 2014. Then, a few days ago, I was looking through my collection and came upon this stupid-ass cartridge label. Staring at it for a few minutes, nostalgia came flooding into my head. Nostalgia of the time I just flat-out dismissed a game my friend really enjoyed. And all that guilt over not having given Guardian Legend a fair shake after owning it for all these years. So, as you probably know, the Guardian Legend is a game that combines shooters and top-down action-adventure games. It's a cool combo that works really well. You play as a badass transformer lady who can turn into a spaceship. You approach a rogue planetoid that is hurtling through space towards Earth in an effort to stop the eventual impact. After blowing a hole in the planet's defenses, you enter and read a message from an inhabitant of the planet, or something, who tried to stop it at some point in the past. The gameplay transitioned to a top-down action-adventure game where you search for different corridors, where you get to pilot the Starship Lady and beat boss enemies that you have to take down to destroy the planet before it hits Earth. Along the way, you'll collect a ton of different weapons and upgrades. At the start, your main character is kind of weak with a single-shot weapon and not much else. Eventually, your main gun evolves into a massive spread shot, and you have an entire arsenal of different weapons that do all kinds of different things, like a beam saber, a fireball, a laser, a few different wave weapons that you can configure to shoot in different directions, and a ton more. You can upgrade these abilities as you go as well, so they do more damage and cover more area of the screen. These weapons work in both the top-down mode as well as the shooter levels, and that's why I think the transition between the game types works so well. It still feels like the same game in both modes. The weapons require the use of chips that show up as blue and red orbs you can find on the map in blocks to blow up or as drops from enemies. Don't worry too much about using all of these up, as chips and health drops are actually pretty common. Even if you start to run out of health or chips, keep blasting away and you'll likely get the drop you need. The game starts a little slow, honestly. This is why I don't think I got too far into it. The shooter levels seem super basic to start, with not a lot of enemy or hazards to worry about. The overhead areas seem vast and hard to get around as well, so my thought was always that the game was just a little boring. Not like super boring, just boring enough that I put it aside for a couple years. But give it a little time. Run around the overhead areas and collect power-ups and weapons, and after a bit, it really starts to pick up. Mini-bosses pop up in the overhead areas that can be a good challenge to beat. The corridors pick up and get faster and faster with more and more enemies, presenting a more exciting and challenging playthrough. The more powerful you become, the more fun it is to swap around weapons and try new approaches to combat. Also, don't forget that you have a map. Get to the map and all your weapons and items that you've collected by hitting the select button. The map actually does help quite a bit. When you collect keys to open new areas, the map will display where any available corridors are to tackle. This was a lot more helpful than I thought it would be, and it isn't nearly as cryptic as it seems once you kind of get your bearings about where everything is. If you have to, use some pre-made maps on GameFAQs or other walkthrough sites to help you find weapons and item upgrades. This is something I usually do these days anyway, just because I don't want to be wandering aimlessly for hours trying to find that chip upgrade I need to get through to the next corridor. Is it cheating? Yeah, probably a little bit, but that's okay. I won't tell anybody you did. Another tip is don't skip over the message areas. There are a bunch of areas in this game where a text box will tell you how to proceed. These are actually quite important and do tell you what you need to open certain corridors. Sometimes it'll tell you something like, bug the Blue Lander for help in opening the seal. And you'll have to go in and out of the Blue Lander shop after buying something off him until he eventually tells you that he'll help you out. Other messages are easier to decipher, like shoot at the seal until it opens, or step on the seal to open it. If you don't know what to do, it'll be hard to figure it out on your own, so again, don't just skip over these message rooms. So the structure of the game works like this. You beat the first shooter level and appear in the overhead hub area. In this hub area, you collect weapons and item upgrades, and then find your way to the first sub-area. Like I mentioned a million times now, your map will help you here. Check all the areas you can before moving on, if you can help it. Some warp points will take you to shops where the lander creatures will sell you stuff, and other warp points will take you to the message areas that tell you how to open sealed corridors. After searching the hub area, you move to the sub-areas, which have 2 corridors each. The corridors are vertically scrolling shooter levels where you have to blast through to the end and destroy a boss. After hitting 10 areas and 20 corridors, the final corridor will open up to you and you'll make your way out of the planet and face the final boss. In a lot of these corridors, you'll obtain a key item, and the key will let you open up other warp points to expand the map further. The game plays fairly quickly, and I think that's what drugged me in so easily this time. You move fast, your weapons can cover the screen and destroy everything in your path, and before you know it, you've rushed through half the game and it's like, well, may as well finish this up. At least, that's what happened to me. I think the game took about 4 or 5 hours for me to finish, and I was taking frequent breaks. I do want to quickly mention how great the music in this game is. I had no problem blasting the sound on my little TV on my desk during this playthrough. I don't really have much else to say about that, I just really enjoyed jamming out. It's all good stuff. I think I've done about as much as I can to convince you to play this game. If you haven't played it in a while, play it again. If you haven't played it at all, play it. Trust me, it's good. I really, really enjoyed this game. The big problem, though, is there's no modern way to play the Guardian Legend. Like, there's no virtual console release on the Wii or the Wii U. There's no NES online availability of it. It was never released outside the NES. So, I guess it's time to riot. So, we're going to Nintendo headquarters to make them release this game on the NES online service. Let's go.